I spent a week testing out the brand new Apple Vision Pro to see if it's going to be a good device for myself and my community, the blind and visually impaired. I tried out all the super cool things that it can do. I went through all the different accessibility settings and I tested it in a bunch of different situations. So the question remains, is this a good device for the blind? Hey guys, my name is Sam. This is The Blind Life, where I create content for and about the blind and visually impaired. And for the last month or so, overwhelmingly, the community has been wanting information about the Apple Vision Pro. Is it accessible? What kind of accessibility does it have? And can blind people even use it? So that's what we're talking about today. First, we'll go over a couple things that it can do, a couple things that it does really well, some things maybe not so much, and then I will give you guys my final thoughts at the end. Before we get into it, I have to address the very expensive elephant in the room. You guys always want me to talk about pricing, so we're gonna do it right at the beginning. The Apple Vision Pro, the base model, is $3,499. That is for a 256 gigabyte model without any accessories, including the prescription lens inserts. All of that stuff is an extra charge. Now also, because a lot of you guys always wonder about this, Apple did not send this unit to me, all right? I bought this with my own money so that I could make this video for you guys. So Apple has no control over what I'm saying about this device. These are all my 100% honest opinions. All right, so let's get started. The number one question, obviously everybody had, does it have accessibility? And yes, I am happy to announce that it does have accessibility. In fact, a lot of the same accessibility that we find in other Apple products. If you'd like a complete walkthrough of the vision-related accessibility settings, check out my previous video where I cover all of that. I also talk about VoiceOver navigation and basic gestures. But the main accessibilities that we would be using in the community is it does have VoiceOver. It does have the zoom magnifier. It also has some visual enhancements like boosting the contrast, turning down the white points, turning off transparencies. A lot of these smaller tweaks that we can do to the user interface to make it easier to use. Another question was text size. Yes, you can increase the text size, just like you can on an iPhone. You can even boost the display size. So if you're familiar with the larger iPhones and the larger iPads, they give you that option to increase the display zoom, essentially making the elements on the display larger. You can do that also with the Apple Vision Pro. The zoom magnifier is kind of interesting because it only magnifies the current window that you're looking at. You've got a couple different ways to initiate the zoom. By default, it's set up where you double tap the left button and hold on the second tap and you spin the digital crown. That zooms in the window. And then you can look around to see the different parts. It does have a lens mode and a full screen mode. Now I say it's pretty interesting because it only does that window. It does not zoom your pass-through view. It doesn't affect that at all. And that brings me to probably the biggest disappointment that a lot of you guys are gonna have is that there is no way to zoom in your pass-through view. So the question we've all had, does it have the stock magnifier app? No, it does not. We're gonna come back to VoiceOver and talk a little bit more in depth about that here in a minute. But speaking of the pass-through mode, one thing to note about this, which is fantastic, is that it's utilizing the two cameras here in the front. This is not a see-through screen. All the electronics are in here, so you cannot see through this piece of glass here. What you are seeing on the inside, the real world that you see, is from these two cameras right here in front. The benefit though is having two cameras, you actually get accurate depth perception. This is a problem we run into with a lot of wearables in the assistive technology world. Most of them are utilizing a single camera, and so we lose our depth perception when we look through them. But having the two cameras, we do get accurate depth perception, and there is imperceptible lag. So as you move your hand around, you see it moving in real time. There is no lag, there is no latency. This is fantastic for interacting with the world around you. You want to go out for a walk and enjoy the day, you absolutely can do that with the pass-through mode. But you just can't zoom in, unfortunately. All right, so we are walking here and I just want to test out the pass-through mode. And it does work. I mean, you can see everything in front of you here. You do lose a lot of your peripheral, but it's not bad. It is a little hard for me to walk here. I would need to use my cane if I were doing this for real. I will say for me personally, I don't have central vision. I have peripheral vision only. So I am able to kind of focus on this smaller field of view, but it's not ideal. I'm losing a lot of my peripheral, which I utilize a lot when I'm moving around in space. Now, the refresh rate on the cameras is amazing. There is like zero lag. I mean, I had somebody throwing me a ball earlier and I was able to catch it. I mean, as well as I can catch a ball anytime. So that wasn't a problem. It's pretty impressive, the refresh rate. Now, I'm not going to go too much into depth over all the amazing things that this can do. You've probably seen hundreds of reviews already. The super immersive content that is available for the device, movies, TV shows, things like that. There's this really cool dinosaur encounter where a portal opens in your wall and a dinosaur sticks its head out and snaps at you. It's all like really, really cool and immersive and exciting and all of that. Now, whether you'll be able to take advantage of all of that, we're going to talk about that in a minute. I do also want to mention the spatial audio that you get with the headset. It is actually really, really cool, especially when you're using VoiceOver. So if you have a window over here to your left and then there's a window in the room over here to your right, when VoiceOver is on that window, the focus is on that window, I can be in this room over here and I'll still hear it and it sounds like it's far away, VoiceOver talking to me. And if I turn in that direction, the sound comes more to the front of me, and as I walk closer to it, it gets louder. That's how the spatial audio works, and it's really impressive. It's kind of trippy, it's definitely immersive. I keep using that word, but there's really no other way to explain it. So the spatial audio for the blind and visually impaired is fantastic, 10 out of 10.
Home. Home. Selected. Apps. Settings. Button. Settings. Search field. People. Environment. TV. Music. Mind. Settings. Button. Free. Photos. Button. Notes. Photos. Button. Search photos.
You do have Siri in the headset, and Siri works just as good as it does on your mobile device. You can trigger Siri with a voice command. She can open up apps for you. She can look up information. She can make FaceTime calls. All the same stuff that she can do on your phone, she can do in the headset. And one of the great things that she can do in the headset that she also does on the mobile device is turning on and off VoiceOver. That comes in very handy quite often. In order to trigger it, I'm going to turn off VoiceOver. Siri, turn off VoiceOver.
VoiceOver off.
Now the VoiceOver's off. Now you can set a triple click of the digital crown as a hardware shortcut to turn on and off VoiceOver. And I definitely recommend doing that. You're going to find yourself probably turning it off and on frequently. And so having an easy way to do that is truly helpful. Now, speaking of VoiceOver, VoiceOver works fairly well. You control it with the pinch gesture. It's essentially a tap of like your index finger to your thumb, but they utilize a lot of fingers. So you have an index finger, a ring finger, a middle finger, both hands. Once again, if you want to learn more about the VoiceOver gestures, the basic gestures, check out my previous video where I go over the accessibility settings. There is a tutorial and a practice area within the VoiceOver settings. I highly recommend you take advantage of that. But once you get the hang of the gestures, as long as you have good lighting, the gestures are very responsive.
Mindfulness. Settings. Freeform. Safari. Photo. Notes. App Store. Mail. Messages. Keynote. Compatible apps. Button.
Now, one of the main questions that I had prior to getting the Apple Vision Pro, and I know a lot of people did as well, is if the primary way you control the device is by line of sight. If I look at an icon and I do the tapping gesture, it chooses that icon. If that's how you control the device, well, what about us? What about the blind community? I have a condition called Stargardt's disease where I don't have central vision. For example, I'm looking in the direction of the camera, but I can't see the camera. I just know it's straight in front of me, so I try to keep my focus in that area. If I want to see that camera, I have to look, oh, now I see it. I have to look off to the side to where I can use my peripheral to see that camera. And even then I can't really see the camera. I just kind of see a black shape. A black camera shape. So how, if I can't look, if I physically can't look right at something, how am I going to choose it? Well, luckily, Apple does give you a couple different options for controlling the Apple Vision Pro. Number one, as we've already mentioned, you have VoiceOver. You can use that. That's primarily what I used to choose things. You also have a pointer option. So you can set up to where when you're pointing, this pointer comes out, and wherever you point, you can choose that item. And they even have options for people with different types of mobility impairments. If you don't have arms, there's a way to do it. You can use head tracking. There's even a way to customize sounds to choose things. And even though obviously eye tracking is the main way to control the device, you are able to skip that during the setup. And speaking of the setup, I am happy to report that I was able to completely set up this device 100% by myself without any problems. When you first turn it on, when it first boots up, it gives you the option to turn on VoiceOver or to access the accessibility settings and go in and set things up there prior to even setting up the device. Okay, so I am going to document this process. I am finally ready to turn on the Apple Vision Pro for the very first time. I'm nervous. The Apple Vision Pro, putting it on for the very first time. Oh, and it's happening. There's an icon. I see the headset here. I don't know what it's telling.
Triple click the digital crown for VoiceOver.
Triple click the digital crown for VoiceOver. Yes, I want to do that.
VoiceOver.
Press and hold the digital crown to align lenses. It's telling me all of this with VoiceOver. Adjustment complete. There's a window floating right here.
Press the digital crown. VoiceOver tutorial. Welcome to VoiceOver.
We're doing the tutorial. And then when it came to the point where it wanted to test my eyes and test the tracking and all that to calibrate it, I was able to skip that section. So, like I said, happy to report that it has accessibility, and the accessibility is there right from the beginning. Something else I should mention about the setup is during the setup, it brings up a QR code on your Apple phone or your iPad. You scan that QR code with the headset, and it connects to all of your stuff. You don't have to do anything. I didn't have to put in an Apple ID. I didn't have to put in a password. I was really worried about that. Did not have to do that. It was fantastic. Everything just ported over and was already set up. Even some of my pronunciation corrections within VoiceOver, VoiceOver verbosity, showed up in the Vision Pro. So that's fantastic. Some people wanted me to test it in a wide variety of applications, and I just wasn't able to do that. One thing to note about the Apple Vision Pro is currently, it's only been out for like 2 or 3 weeks, and currently there isn't a lot of applications that have been designed specifically for the Vision Pro. Relatively speaking. I mean, there's several hundred applications available, but in the grand scheme of applications that work on Apple products, that's a very tiny number. Now, there are thousands of applications that will work on the Vision Pro, but they are essentially iPad applications that just work on the device. So when you launch an application and a window pops open, you're essentially looking at the iPad version of that application. So regarding accessibility for those applications, if they are accessible on the iPad, they will be accessible on the Apple Vision Pro. Now, I know a lot of people are wondering what types of apps are available for the Apple Vision Pro that are geared towards us, the blind and visually impaired. Well, I did a search through the App Store for things like Seeing AI, Be My Eyes, Envision AI, those types of apps. and some were on there, although I will say Seeing AI did not show up in the list at all, which was kind of odd. I installed Be My Eyes because I wanted to check the Be My AI feature. If you're unfamiliar with that, it's the brand new ChatGPT integration into the Be My Eyes app. I did a whole video about that a couple of weeks ago, but I installed the app and it installed fine, and just once again, it's just the iPad version of the app working in the headset. I set it up. It even asked if I wanted to connect the Vision Pro camera, if I wanted to use the camera from the Vision Pro. I said yes, but it did not work. It just displayed a black screen with this icon kind of indicating that nothing was connected. I even tried taking pictures, and Be My AI processed and said it's simply a black screen with a white icon. So clearly it's not compatible yet with the Apple Vision Pro. And for the time being, I think that's what you're gonna find with a lot of these apps. Simple apps like the Notes and Calendar and that sort of thing, they work fine on here, but anything that's going to be using the camera, possibly the microphone, it might need to be updated first before it's fully supported on the Apple Vision Pro. And then finally, the other big thing that people wanted me to test is connecting the Vision Pro to a computer and using it as an external monitor. Currently, from what I can tell, you can only do this with a Mac computer. There is no way, other than a developer way, there is no way to connect this to a PC. I could be wrong about that, but in my research, that's what I've found. But regarding using this with a Mac, first of all, the integration is seamless. If you are deep in the Apple ecosystem, that's not going to be a surprise to you. Apple prides themselves on all of their devices working very well together. But regarding the Mac, whenever you open up your Mac, you're presented with a little message saying, do you want to connect to the Vision Pro, display the screen on the Vision Pro? You say yes, and it just pops into existence. There is another way to initiate that. It's within the control center. You have a little button that is for displaying your Mac screen. But once it's up and floating in front of you in a window, everything works perfectly fine. I did hear some people say it was a little glitchy for them. I didn't have any problems. My screen being displayed in that window, all of my accessibility on my Mac worked. I was able to zoom in. I was able to do all of that. And the best part, which is really gonna be enticing for a lot of people, I wanted to see how big I could make that window. Number one, I grabbed it and I brought it as close as I could to myself. With all of these windows, there's a certain point when it gets too close that it starts to disappear on you because you're walking through the window. And I'm happy to report that you can get really close to a lot of these windows, which was fantastic. That really helped when trying to see small print on some of these things. But I pulled that window as close as I could to me. It ended up being about 8 to 10 inches away from my face. And then I stretched it out as wide and as tall as I could make it. And then I got out a tape measurer. I'm sure I looked ridiculous. Thankfully, nobody was here at the house, but I'm sure I looked kind of silly measuring just empty space in my living room. But I wanted to see how big this window was. So I measured on the diagonal, and it measured out to be about 75 inches. So you can make a 75-inch 4K screen 10 inches away from your face and use your Mac on that. And of course, you can have other windows open. You could have a Safari browser open on the side. You could have your notes open over here. Out of all the stuff I tried, I think that would end up being the most useful for us. And with that being said, it's time to talk about the negatives. I'm not going to mention the weight of the device. A lot of people have talked about that. It doesn't bother me. I don't think it's that heavy, personally. One thing I was disappointed in is the pass-through. I had hoped that it would improve my vision. Generally, if I'm looking through a screen through a camera, I can actually see better than I can in real life. But it did not translate over to this device for some reason. I've seen other people talk about it and they said that they could see better through it, but I personally could not. I think part of the reason is that the technology they're using, in order to get that super high resolution screen and not completely tax the processor for the computer, they actually only do a high resolution area where your center vision is. And then it kind of blurs out past that. Unfortunately, as I said before, I don't have central vision. I see everything with my peripheral, so I would need the entire screen to be high resolution. And that was one of my main problems, is everything was just blurry. Everything was fuzzy to me. Now, I do have a bit of astigmatism, and I do sometimes wear prescription glasses, and I don't have the prescription lens inserts. But honestly, I don't use them that often. I use them when I go to the movies because it does make the movie a little bit sharper. But just in general, I don't. And I don't see the real world as blurry. So I don't think that played into my issues with this pass-through mode. The other thing is the pass-through mode is kind of dark. A lot of people were asking that question also. Will the pass-through mode brighten up a dark environment? Some cameras do that. You know, your phone, if you're in a dark area and you use your phone camera, it will brighten up the scene. And this does to a very small degree. If I were to look at a bright light, it will darken a little bit to compensate. And if I go away from that bright light, it will brighten up again. But it doesn't really brighten a room a lot, very much at all, really. So the fact that it doesn't brighten and the fact that it's just a little dark in general, kind of like you were wearing very light tinted sunglasses, and then it being blurry makes it difficult for me to wear these to completely interact with the world. Then the thing that on one hand was super helpful, but was also one of the things I struggled with the most was VoiceOver. Because VoiceOver is controlled by hand gestures, it is super sensitive. I tend to gesture when I talk, I tend to gesture with my hands. And you can't really do that because VoiceOver is just jumping everywhere and speaking and talking and blah, 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 blah. It's extremely difficult to work with in some situations.
Slide TBL Basic Slide 4, page 2 of 4. TBL Basic 2023 2. Slide TBL Basic 2023 2. TBL Basic 2020 TBL Basic 2023 2. Edit canvas, reader mode, picture. Another problem is that you're essentially using VoiceOver in camera mode. I mean, that's basically what this is. It's a giant camera. And if you guys know VoiceOver in camera mode, what happens when you point your camera at a couple of people? 2 people in front of you, 2 people, 3 people in front of you, 3 people, 4 people. The Vision Pro does that constantly if you are around people. If you saw my unboxing, you probably heard my story about how I had a terrible experience getting a demo of this product in the Apple Store. And a big part of that was I was sitting in a room with like 100 people in there, and VoiceOver was just constantly shouting in my ear how many people were in front of me. There's other little things like when you're using VoiceOver and you grab onto the handle to move a window, it doesn't really move very well. It's kind of clunky. It's hard to put it where you want it. If you watch my accessibility settings video, you probably saw that.
App placement bar.
And we've got it here.
App placement bar.
And
Settings.
I can move it around. In the case, you get these pads that attach to the light shield via magnets, and they just make it soft and comfortable when you're wearing the Vision Pro. But these things cut down on the field of view like crazy. So my big tip is to just pop these out and wear the Vision Pro without them. It's not that uncomfortable, but you're gonna gain so much field of view by doing this. Some people are even popping out the light shield itself and wearing the Vision Pro without it. And while this does give you a little bit more field of view, your peripheral is wide open, and for me, that just doesn't work. I need the light shield in here to completely block out my peripheral. That allows me to focus more on the screen. But like I said, even taking out the padding helps tremendously. But probably the main problem with the Vision Pro is that this is a device that was built for the visual. 95% of the things you do with this device are very visual. And for a non-visual community, all of that's just wasted. So even though I could do some of the things, I could see the immersive movie and see how big the screen is and all of that. And also I could put my windows up and they're floating out in front of me. That's all really cool stuff, but I just can't take advantage of all of that as much as someone who is fully sighted can. So the question becomes, why would I use this, the Vision Pro, when I'm only using about 5% of it, or 10% at the most, when I can just use my phone or my tablet? So my recommendation is, if your vision is to a certain point, if you are considered legally blind, is probably a safe place to start. If you are considered legally blind, which is around 2200 or worse, then I don't really see the point in getting an Apple Vision Pro. Not yet, okay? Stay with me here. As it is right now, I just don't see the point. Now, the spatial audio is super cool. Don't get me wrong, that is really, really cool. But you could also just get that with a pair of Apple AirPods. Now, if you are low vision and your vision is better than 2200, you might want to consider it, because you would be able to take advantage of a lot of the visual things. And then once again, using this as an external monitor for your Mac, that honestly is one of the only things I could see this being like really, really good at for a lot of us. But now it's not all doom and gloom, because we have to remember that this has only been out for like 3 weeks, okay? And we're still on like software version 1 or something. This is Gen 1 of a brand new product. If you think about the iPhone, Gen 1 or the iPhone, even Gen 2 and Gen 3 of the iPhone was terrible for us. And now, not just an iPhone, because I'm an Android user also, but smartphones in general have become some of the most useful tools we have in the blind community. So I think the potential is definitely there for the Apple Vision Pro. I just don't think it's there right now in its current state. Okay guys, that was my review of the Apple Vision Pro. I hope you enjoyed that and found it helpful. If you guys have any questions for me, please let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, hit the like button. And if you would like to see more content like this, definitely consider subscribing, because I put out videos like this every single Saturday. I've got a goal to reach 100,000 subscribers this year, and with your help, I can do it. I've got a pretty steep mountain to climb, but I'm determined and I think I can do it. But I need your help. If you're not subscribed to the channel, just go ahead and click subscribe. It's 100% free. It doesn't cost you anything. It helps me reach my goal, and it also tells YouTube that this is an important channel that needs to be shared. But that is it for this one, guys. This is Sam with The Blind Life. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.